Welcome to the Region of Solutions podcast, where we give you the insider's take on the impactful work and initiatives being undertaken at ESCAP. I'm Kavita Sukanandan. Today, we are focusing on the critical work of the Northeast Asian Subregional Program for Environmental Cooperation, otherwise known as NEASPEC. This is an initiative that addresses environmental challenges that transcend national borders within this region, seeking solutions to issues that no single country or person can solve alone. By fostering regional cooperation, NEASPEC plays a vital role in conserving biodiversity, improving air quality, and advancing sustainable development across Northeast Asia. These efforts have a profound impact, touching on public health, economic stability, and the natural heritage of millions of people in the region. Stay with us as we explore how this work is shaping a more sustainable future. Now that we have set the stage, let's hear from the experts themselves. Joining us today are Jennifer George, Chief Executive of the East Asian-Australasian Flyway Partnership, a committed partner in NEASPEC's mission, and Kazuhiko Seriu, Associate Environmental Affairs Officer for the ESCAP Subregional Office for North and Northeast Asia. Welcome, everyone. So to kickstart our episode, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say kia ora, Kavita. Now, that is Māori, our Indigenous people, for hello, and it tells you that I'm a New Zealander. So my name is Jennifer, as you've heard. I'm the Chief Executive of the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership Secretariat, and we're based in South Korea. We're a small team, and we're making quite a big impact across our region, from New Zealand to the Russian Federation and Alaska. So a bit about me. I grew up in a remote rural area in New Zealand. I had a mother who was deeply connected to nature. And even back then, which is quite a long time ago now, she talked of the damage that people had done to the environment that she knew. And that for her, insects were an example of that. Were many of that were not there any longer. For me, I remember looking up into the sky at the birds flying over and wishing I could be one. But it wasn't until 2017 that I became interested in migratory shorebirds at the Pukorokoro Miranda site in New Zealand. And I learned there about that stunning story of the Godwit journey. A Godwit that travels 30,000 kilometres a year across our flyway from New Zealand. But the other part is my professional background, and it's quite different. And I've been a lawyer, a business developer, an educator, youth justice issues person, community, and worked in both local and central government. And I kind of like to call that a squiggly career. And it's not focused on the environment. But the theme for me has always been about building connections and leadership in the spaces that I have been in. So to this area, importantly, I think I bring a corporate background, but I add that to the scientific and expert knowledge of the people in our partnership who built this partnership over the last 15 years. So if you think about when I go to a meeting, I'm more likely to go with my laptop and shopping bag, as opposed to our passionate birders who will travel with a backpack and binoculars.
My name is Seriu, and I am an Associate Environmental Affairs Officer at this ESCAP Subregional Office for East and Northeast Asia, based in Incheon, Republic of Korea. Let me actually start a little bit with my professional journey. So I started my career at the United Nations University on environmental policies. Specifically, I worked on the project called the Satayama Initiative. It is a global effort launched at the COP10 of the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, back in 2010. So this initiative is basically focusing on biodiversity conservation through a socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes, particularly recognizing the interconnectedness between human activities and ecosystems. So my role there was actually to coordinate the best practices from all around the world to inform the discussions under the Convention on Biological Diversity. So I went to Peru, I went to Ghana, I went to Malaysia, all of the places basically to collect all these best practices, on this connectedness between human activities and ecosystems. But over the time, I also developed a strong interest in intergovernmental negotiations on environmental policies, which led me to serve as an advisor at the permanent mission of Japan in Geneva. So now, currently, I focus on strengthening transboundary environmental cooperation among 6 member states in this region, Northeast Asia. I always had this kind of deep appreciation for the balance between human development and environmental sustainability.
Wow, Kazu, that is also a worldwide travel that's going through your career path. So, one of the questions that we love asking all our guests on the podcast, what solution are you bringing for the region?
We're a UN Type 2 partnership of 18 countries and 23 non-government organizations. So across all of those countries. So what makes the EAAFP unique, I think, in this whole region is that while our mission is around migratory water birds, the habitats that they're on and the people whose livelihoods depend on those habitats, what makes us different is that key element of our strategic plan is that we are building a chain of internationally important sites for our birds. So if we're building a chain, we're building connections. It's the birds that connect us. We need to connect governments. We need to build communities so that our birds are safe passage along the way. And so we are focused on those 3 aspects. So I think in terms of the solutions that we're trying to seek, it is around the connectivity, which is what I'm really pleased to be here to talk about. Because, if you think about our world, we can no longer be isolated because, we are a global world. And it's also our birds don't recognize boundaries. So if we're going to create solutions, first of all, I think that we have to connect our communities and our nations to think more broadly than the borders. So what our solutions is around bringing our experts, our communities, and our governments together to focus on the chain of sites rather than just their particular wetlands in their area.
The beauty of NEASPEC is its close and narrow focus at the sub-regional level, focusing on, the 6 member states in this Northeast Asia that share the national borders. So we share the common challenges, we share the common issues. So I think it is really important platform to work on at the sub-regional level. And we are engaged in several programmatic areas such as air pollution, marine protected areas, low carbon city development, desertification and land degradation, and of course, biodiversity and nature conservation. So you see quite a range of different topics that we cover because, again, like we share these common challenges that come across different borders in this region. So under the biodiversity and nature conservation component, we have 6 flagship species. 3 are migratory birds and 3 are big cats. So NEASPEC is really aiming to strengthen, again, transboundary cooperation for these species by coordinating efforts. And especially, we are doing to share monitoring methods and also data and also the best practices across these member states. So through that, I think NEASPEC is a perfect platform to foster cross-border collaboration, advance scientific and policy coordination, and also implement practical solutions for the region that benefit not only nature, but also humans in these regions.
Within the EAFP, we have a big group of experts. And so I can provide expert advice to all of our countries, all of our sites. And so we have 17 of those working groups and task forces, and they might be focused around a particular species like the black-faced spoonbill that Kazu's just been talking about, because, they were very endangered. And then we have other expert group. A new one is the avian disease group. And so they work across our flyway, and they're not just regional experts, they're experts that can come from around the world that have some skills and knowledge and expertise to offer to our countries and our sites.
So, if our audiences have not caught on, today's episode is all about migratory birds in particular. But for someone who's sitting on the subway right now and listening to this podcast in the middle of an urban city, why exactly is protecting migratory birds so important?
They remind us of a bigger world. They remind us of other places. So they're an inspiration in that sense. These birds, if you see them or imagine that they come from places that you may never have seen, never have been to. They then go to places that you will never go to, like the Russian Federation and the Arctic and Alaska. So there's that source of inspiration that leads, I think, into the well-being that not just the migratory birds provide, but the habitats that they use. It is, more likely for people sitting on the subway, they'll be going to the habitats, and increasingly, there is a lot of research about getting outdoor, getting into open spaces protects our well-being. It restores well-being. And that is why there is a growing movement, not just our region, but around the world, about opening and developing, restoring these wetland places, not just along the coasts and the rivers, but smaller spaces in our cities where people can go, be restored, and imagine something different. There is a cultural and a part of this as well. For Indigenous peoples, for thousands of years, our migratory birds have been important to them.
The migratory birds are, in a way, indicators, of our environmental health. So basically, that the health of these migratory birds also is linked to human health as well, because we see already the COVID pandemic and also, spread of the avian flu. So it's not disconnected from our lives, human lives, so it's always intertwined between these migratory birds issues and also human life. So
What are some of the biggest threats, though, in this region?
I think for the flyway that reaches across East Asia, there are many more people than there are birds, right? So there are 50 million migratory birds that go backwards and forwards across our flyway twice a year. So whereas the amount of people in our area, it constitutes about 26% of the world population, as well as, GDP. So you've got pressure. It's the pressure of people needing food, needing a place to live, and they're all really important things. So that leads to one of the big risks is around development. So it's like coastal development, building houses, building factories, and so on. But that also is around green energy. So we need more power. So we put dams on our rivers. It stops the water flowing into our wetlands.
Jennifer, you mentioned a little bit about the gaps that seem to be existing between the policies in place by governments and what's happening on the ground. What's on your wish list on how we can close these gaps?
I think one of the wish list for me is to get more corporate involvement. Now, it's not just corporate money, but it's corporate involvement and understanding of some of the issues, because I think a lot of it is around not knowing the impacts, it's some of the actions that they have. I think too, some of the governments taking a stronger lead on some of these issues. And we've seen some of our countries on the flyway, their governments have made very clear stands about what is not allowed to happen and how putting a halt on development in key places. And so when that then trickles down to local governments, you see the change. But those conversations at that level have to happen at a bilateral, multilateral level. And we have some multilateral arrangements through our flyway where those conversations do happen around our migratory water birds.
And Kazu, how is regional cooperation playing a role in this then?
These environmental challenges, especially those related to biodiversity and climate change, it doesn't really recognize political borders, right? Obviously, these species in wildlife would not recognize these borders. So in this context, I think the regional cooperation is very, very crucial to allow these countries to share resources and expertise and data and basically creating more effective and sustainable solutions.
And have there been any milestones or inspiring case studies from the region where you've just gone like, wow, this has been such a huge step for the conservation of migratory birds that you'd like to share?
I would like to share maybe one milestone that where we helped the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to join the Ramsar Convention. So back in 2013, we collaborated with Hans Seriu Foundation and of course EFP, to conduct this field survey and also workshop in Rason Reserve to assess the ecological significance of the Rason Migratory Birds Reserve. So these findings basically provided the initial scientific evidence confirming that the reserve really met the Ramsar criteria as an internationally important wetlands. So basically, these efforts really contributed to identifying this Rason region as eligible for Ramsar designation. So which in turn contributed to DPRK joining the Ramsar Convention.
Thank you both for those valuable insights into the critical work that's being done to protect migratory birds and on how regional cooperation also is playing a huge role here. Before we wrap up, could you maybe give the elevator pitch, one brief punchy line on what you'd like our listeners to take away from today's episode?
The conservation of migratory birds is, I think, a shared responsibility. And it's not alienated issues from humans. Basically, it also connects with us humans, right? Because it also means safeguarding ecosystems and biodiversity that really, we depend on this healthy environment.
I'd like to lead the concept of building connections, weaving connections with each other, and on a personal basis, and reach out to individuals. Because there's so much damage to our ecosystems that need repair.
I really like that. A good note to end on. So that's all for today's episode. A huge thank you to our guests, Jennifer and Kazu, for sharing their expertise with us. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring stories from the Asia-Pacific region. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and be part of the solution for our region. Have a great week ahead.